You are now entering the horror sanctum.
Hello, welcome back to the Horror Sanctum podcast. I'm Jay with Kellen and TJ, and we are elated to be joined today by singer, songwriter, writer, producer, director, the one and only Spider One. Spider, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the Sanctum.
Yes, thank you for having me in the Sanctum.
If you're not familiar, you probably are. As you see, my shirt, Powerman 5000, is his band. They were fantastic. I think came out in '96.
It's difficult to pinpoint exactly, but I think I date the band back as far as '92, which is insane. I mean, it's like you start a band and you think it'll last for 6 months, and then 30 years later you're still doing it. It's insane.
Right. So I want to start off. You've kind of dove into the horror movie scene in the last 3 years, three movies, Allegoria, Bury the Bride, and Little Bites. So we'll get into that too. But before I have one quick music question. So I was introduced to you back in '99 when Tonight the Stars Revolt came out. Like I absolutely fell in love with that album, start to finish. I still have it somewhere in this house. But yeah, I've been hooked ever since. So you started making music, started touring, but before Powerman 5000, my question is, when do we get a MC Spider Much Evil comeback tour?
Yeah,
is that something that's ever going to happen?
No, I really hope not.
I listened to that for the first time this weekend. It's not that bad. Like
I started out before Powerman had morphed out of me doing this weird solo rap thing called MC Spider. That it's kind of embarrassing to talk about, but I mean, I thought I was, making straight up rap music, and now I listen back to it and it sounds like some weird. It doesn't even sound that much different than Powerman, just less guitars. But yeah, I did that because I didn't know any musicians. So I had met a dude who owned a studio, and he would produce these tracks. And because I couldn't sing, still can't, by the way. But it's like, so I tried to do this quasi weird rap where I would sort of combine lyrics inspired by like Charles Bukowski, but I wanted to sound like Ice-T, but the music was maybe more industrial. And so yeah, I stumbled around for a while as this weird rap thing, and then I finally met some actual musicians in Boston where the band started, and it morphed into a real band.
You can definitely still hear the MC stuff in Powerman. You won an award for that, right? It was like some critics' choice, fans' choice.
I won a best rapper in Boston, which was hilarious. And then I got nominated for a Boston Music Award for best rapper. I didn't win, and I was so happy I didn't win because everyone else nominated were sort of like these hardcore gangster rap dudes. And if I had won and walked up on stage, I mean, at the time I had long hair, like down to past my chest, and I probably would have been murdered if I had won that. So I was thankful I didn't win that.
That's funny. Just
I don't know if you can hear that. It's a cat meowing in the background.
I wonder if that was a cat. Multiple of us have cats, so I didn't know who it was.
Mine are probably scratching at the door. I actually had a stray I was taking care of that just showed up at my door for the first time in 2 months today. Like I was so elated. But anyways, my real music question besides the MC Spider comeback tour is '96. I believe you guys played the second stage at Ozfest. And
Yes.
You're also featured on an episode of Beverly Hills 90210. A little bit of a contrast there. How did you end up on Beverly Hills 90210?
Well, the Beverly Hills 90210 thing was previous. I think that was in 94, 95, maybe 95. We were again in Boston. And we had just put out this EP called True Force. And the couple that ran the label, their daughter, I'm trying to make it as simple. Their daughter was an actress, or still is an actress, on 90210. Her then boyfriend at the time was Jason Priestley, who was on 90210. So they would send them music, send Jason music from their label to see if they could place any of it on the show. And for whatever reason, I guess he liked our band and asked us to come on the show. And at the time I thought, this is a terrible idea. Like, it's just like zero street cred to this. This is awful. But then I'd learned the Cramps had been on 90210. I was like, well, the Cramps can do it, then I guess it's okay. And then on top of that, I was essentially homeless at the time. My then girlfriend had just left me. I was just sleeping on people's couches. It was the middle of winter in Boston, so it was probably sub-zero. So I was like, fuck it, let's go. Let's go do it. And it was honestly an amazing experience, the most fun. And it was the main reason that I moved to LA, because we'd had such a good time on that show.
Yeah.
It's never been as fun in LA as that, but because we were treated like stars, you know.
Sure. I was curious, are you in LA now? Are you in Boston?
Yes. No, I've lived in LA since 96, 97.
No fire issues with you in your area?
No, I mean, we were lucky. We were far enough away where we didn't have to evacuate or anything. Yeah.
Good to know. All right, so let's go into your films. Allegoria anthology, 5 stories, I believe. You did them all. You directed them all. You wrote them all.
Directed, wrote, catered, produced, paid for. Wardrobe. Just everything.
It's a fun little anthology. Usually anthologies like several directors, several writers, but you're just like, hold my beer. I'm going to take care of this, and it's great. The tie-in stories are fantastic. My question from that one is, what are the chances of a Big Baby feature length?
Well, I can tell you right now that we have already shot the Big Baby feature.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Yes. We are literally in the final stages of VFX and music and mixing right now on it. So, but it's not as goofy as, like, probably no one listening to this has watched Allegoria, but if they do, there's one scene, there's a movie within a movie. These girls are watching what I was trying to make is just a terrible, D-level horror movie they were watching called Big Baby. And so your question about Big Baby is, I've heard a million times, like, people, you got to make Big Baby movie. You got to make a Big Baby movie. So I had to figure out a way to do this where I didn't want to make it like a complete goof, So we made a super fun, crazy slasher movie, but it's a serious Big Baby movie, which is, if you can only imagine, that's not easy to do.
Yeah, I'm excited. Like with Eli Roth doing Thanksgiving and Machete out there, like it, doing that stuff's fun, especially when I wouldn't expect it to be as silly as what was in Allegoria, but it's still fun. It's on Tubi. Is that on Tubi?
Allegoria is on Shudder and Amazon and all that.
Bury the Bride's on.
Bury the Bride's on Tubi. Yeah,
but watch Allegoria. It's fantastic. It's all different styles of art and these stories. It's a lot of fun. You and Chrissy did the music. Is that right?
I think she did all the sound design and music for that. I wrote the song the band is playing in the it's like a 3-chord punk rock song. I mean, Allegoria was literally like, I mean, it's funny. It was made during COVID because, we couldn't tour. The band was not doing anything, which I was so excited about for a little while. It gave me an excuse to do nothing. But then after a few months, I started to get really antsy, and like, what am I going to do? I'm like I need to do something creative. And like a lot of people, I got a COVID relief check. And I was like, well, fuck, man, like, I'll make a movie with this money, and, it was great because nobody was working. I'm fortunate to live in LA and be in, a lot of great actors that are friends. So nobody was doing anything. So I was able to wrangle a bunch of people maybe I wouldn't have normally been able to get at the time, and just put all that money into making that thing. And, I mean, it's definitely a labor of love, as they say. And it's a very small movie, but it was very rewarding to actually accomplish that, with so few people and so few resources.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask my final, it's not my final, it's the one I had to ask last, but you just kind of spoke a little bit with COVID, how you had to stop playing music. Do you prefer one over the other these days, like from touring or making films? Like, if you could only do one, which one are you sticking with?
It's funny. I find them both to be necessary at this point, because one serves a certain, like playing music or going on tour and playing live shows. It's like this immediate immediate thing that you do, and you get an immediate reaction from the crowd. And it's really like it's very simple. Making a movie is, even a small movie is a pretty long process, and it involves a lot of different people, and the results come, months later, maybe a year later, so they're a nice balance. I don't know which one I prefer. I think right now movies are more exciting to me because every step forward, every creative thing that we accomplish, is a huge thing, and it's all very new. Music, it's like, look, I've been doing it for so long. There's nothing new probably that's going to happen to me. I've played in front of 2 people. I've played in front of 200,000 people. And I've been in every up and down, and so whereas that is become, I guess, more of a job. The movie thing has become more of a passion. So, but I do feel like I kind of need both of them in my life.
Yeah. I mean, PM5K was cinematic anyways, like from
it was always, I've always been a visual artist. I before I did music, I went to art school, and I dropped out in 3 months, but I always thought I was going to be, when I was a kid, I wanted to draw comic books. So everything I do, I think of from a visual sense. I mean, it's almost like the music part of being in a band was almost like the last thing I thought about, so yeah, I mean, I think everything's always been based around that.
Okay. Bury Your Bride. It's on Tubi. How was Near Dark an inspiration for that at all? Like, where did your inspiration and idea come from for Bury the
Bride? No, I mean, it really wasn't. It's funny. Bury the Bride was one of those things. That was the only thing I've ever co-wrote. Me and Chrissy co-wrote that one, and we were kind of batting around this idea of this almost like home invasion kind of thing, and with an ensemble cast, and we were sort of struggling with it. Like, at first it was supposed to be just these dangerous guys. And creatively, I felt like it kind of hit a wall. And I remember we were standing in our kitchen, and I was like, okay, maybe this is a terrible idea, but what if they're vampires? And so I just gave away the twist. But so then it became like this really ridiculous, fun thing that, so yeah, I mean, it wasn't really inspired by anything in particular. It was just one of those things, like a lot of ideas, you just start talking, you start just letting things roll in your head and see what sticks.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Scout is great in that. Met her a couple times. She's always great. So let's shift to Little Bites. First of all, if you Google Little Bites, add movie or Spider-One or film, because if not, you're just going to get the Little Debbie or whatever snack.
You're going to get
like, that's all it
cupcakes,
is.
Yeah,
which was hilarious. But that's based off a book.
No,
it's not. So I was looking into it, like Aguiar was in a book.
This is one of my questions too. Yeah,
I was about immortality. I'm like, it felt so similar. But if that wasn't the case, then we'll go to the next one. Was that ending always the ending for Little Bites? Is that always the direction it was going to go? Because I've seen it 2 or 3 times now, and Bonnie Arians, who plays the grandmother, is incredibly similar to the look of the creature.
Right.
It kind of ends like everything was. I don't know, it's hard not to spoil movies on these things, but it kind of ends like everything was real. But the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, this is trauma or addiction, and it can be both at the same time. But the way it ended, I thought maybe it was more in her head, and it didn't really end that way necessarily. Was that always how it was going to end?
I mean, that was. I mean, that was always the ending. I mean, to me, look, I love movies that. It's funny. I find modern audiences want more answers than questions, whereas I grew up in a time where I feel like, or at least a lot of movies that I love leave more questions than answers. So I like that about Little Bites. I like that the things that you're saying, like, well, was it in her head? Was it real? Was it actually happening? And I like that the movie itself, to me, plays almost like a bit of a mystery as you're going through it, because just when you think like, oh, she's nuts and this isn't happening, then something that happens that shows you that it's real. But that said, like, whatever metaphors that you're playing with and whatever whatever. For me, I always approach everything like it's really happening, because that's at least in the way I perceive the movie and the way I wrote it was that I wanted it to be, yes, there actually was this creature named Agyar in her house. But it also does play as a metaphor. I mean, for me, a lot of people have related to the movie, like you said, abuse or addiction. For me, it was all parenthood. It's all being a parent, um, and how difficult that can be. And so for me, that was always what it was about, was raising and protecting a child, And Agyar represents everything that can go fucking wrong, no matter how hard you try.
Right. So I'm curious, what inspired the name Agyar? Because I went down a whole rabbit hole being like, that sounds like a very specific name. Is that like an ancient Greek thing or whatever? And then I got all these weird different things, but I figure I got the creator here.
Yeah. I mean, it really was, it's always like, you're trying to come up with a name for a character, a monster, and probably you don't want to call him Steve like that.
Right.
Not
Yeah,
that.
Steve the Monster. Right?
So I just started thinking, well, what's this guy going to look like? And he's biting and he has sharp teeth. And so I just started to research, yeah, and I could be wrong, but I think I came upon the Hungarian word for fang is
Yep.
Ag. And so that's really as simple as it is. I just wanted to I wanted to you could call him Fang, but it sounds like he's, in a 80s punk rock band or something. So, so it was as simple as that. Just trying, it sounded so cool. It almost sounded made up. To me, it was easy to say, easy to spell. It sounds good to say it. And yeah, it was just purely just doing some research on other versions of Fang or Tusk or whatever it is. Yeah.
For the record, Steve would be very unsettling if I was being pursued by a maniac named Steve.
Steve.
Right.
Yeah.
Damn you, Steve. Yeah. Yeah. So I got a little. The way I discovered that Agyar meant Fang was because when you type in Agyar film and into the Google machine, it comes up with the Kevin Smith movie from 2014, Tusk, with Dustin Long. I was like, what is that about? So I had to deconstruct and come down to that. So do you consider that film like in the vampire lore, or is this like a totally different type of creature, you think?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have called him a vampire. I never ever considered him a vampire. I just kind of wanted to try to create something in an original space. I mean, I suppose there is some vampire. I mean, he certainly resembles Nosferatu, and I guess he is consuming flesh and blood. So there are similarities to the vampire lore, but I didn't want to base him as a vampire. Because then you get into the whole other, people. Well, if he was a vampire, he wouldn't, So yeah, it's just he's Agyar, and I think he's just I think, for me, the scene with Heather Langenkamp where she has her own scars, to me, was just representing that, everybody has their Agyar, and it may present itself in a different form for her as it did for Mindy. But yeah, I think it can be whatever it needs to be at that moment,
Great get, by the way, to get the original final girl of the Nightmare on Elm Street series.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there's been times where we had, in Little Bites, we had Heather Langenkamp, Barbara Crampton, and Bonnie Aarons. I mean, it's pretty exciting when you get to work with people that you grew up watching. It's really one of the best things about doing these kind of movies, and that they trust you and they, that they are excited to do it, so yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Great cast, especially for a small film that essentially only has like 6 main characters, something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty small.
Chaz Bono's always great too.
Yeah, Chaz is great. I mean, Chaz is and he's in Big Baby as well. We always give him, I feel like he's always somehow gets like the scene stealing character. It's always like some guy you feel sorry for, or slightly comedic, and certainly in Little Bites that's a favorite scene of mine when she's feeding him the ice cream, and it's because the movie is, anyone has seen Little Bites, it's pretty heavy, it's pretty dark, and in that scene, which isn't straight comedy, it definitely lends a little bit of relief in the film, you know.
Yeah. So how did you get connected with Chaz and Cher in terms of filmmaking?
Well, Chaz, let's see. Chaz is managed by some managers that for a while were repping Chrissy. So they had said, "Hey, you guys should meet. You'd really hit it off. You love a lot of the same things. Chaz is a big horror movie fan." And so, yeah, it just sort of became friends. And then he had expressed interest in also wanting to help get on board in the producer role as well. So Bury the Bride did, we all worked together on that. And that was when Cher became sort of curious about what we were doing. Like, what are you crazy kids doing over there, with your puppet show, So she just became really interested and started asking questions. And I think was really, as someone who's done major studio films, she was like highly impressed what we were able to pull off. She's like, "Oh my God, like this stuff looks amazing." And so when it was time to do Little Bite, she was just like, "I want to be a part of this." So, and she's been like a incredible cheerleader for us. And and I mean, talk about a surreal situation, screening your movie for Cher in her house, in her movie theater. It's crazy. Right? So,
Yeah.
and she's not, she admittedly so is not a big horror movie fan, but when she saw Little Bite, she came to the screening in LA at Beyond Fest and was just like blown away. And she's like, "I think it might be better than Get Out." And I was like, "Yes." So she's been great. I mean, and so, she'll be on board as a producer for Big Baby as well. So it's really
That's
exciting.
awesome. That's very
Yeah.
awesome. So there's a lot going on in your films, man. It's not like by accident that your first film's called Allegoria. I think all of your films and things that I've seen that you've done has a lot of allegory, metaphor,
Sure.
different interpretations. And I like that you like to leave more questions than answers, like, old 70s directors like George Romero would just kind of throw it out and you figure out the the commentary, right? I
Sure.
like that old school kind of feel. When I watched Little Bites recently, there was two films that come to mind. There was it seemed like I'm just curious if they were inspirations at all, or if I'm just projecting that in my own interpretation. But I thought immediately of The Babadook and the 1995 Larry Fessenden film Habit, which was
Hmm.
uh, a vampire kind of type film like that. Uh, were either of those any inspiration, any of your work at all?
No, I mean, I haven't seen Habit, so that absolutely. I mean, I've seen The Babadook, and that's a film a lot of people, relate to Little Bites because I think obviously it deals with a
Trauma
kid.
and
Yeah,
everything. Yeah.
but no, I mean, honestly, it wasn't. I mean, Little Bites truly was um, a movie that was inspired by no movie, only like story wise, was only through my experience as a parent. Like, and that was really it. Aesthetically, I wanted to set it in the 70s because one, it's really fun to do that, and you can eliminate the trappings of technology and
Cell phones, all that
yeah, a
stuff.
lot of directors would agree that it's but I realized, and I don't think I realized it at the time, but I was sort of imagining this was 1979, and I think in 1979, if I did the math, I would have been the same age as the daughter in the film, which I thought was like, perfect because I wanted it to feel what it felt like to be a kid in those times. Um, and so for me, those are the most important things. But no, I mean, I'm trying to think if there are any movies that I referenced while making this. And a lot of times it's more for the actors. Certainly like if you watch Little Bites, there's a real intentional pace to the dialogue. So, I would, there's some Kubrick influence in that.
I definitely got a little with Chrissy, a little with the Shelley Duvall and The Shining, kind of in terms of.
Well, what I wanted to with all the actors, if Chrissy was talking to Aguiar, or if she was talking to CPS worker, or she was talking to another mom in the grocery store, you wouldn't be having a normal conversation because you're always trying to protect this secret, or in the case of her talking to Aguiar, you're trying to protect your own life and your life of your child. So everything is said in a thoughtful way. Like I remember explaining to her, I'm like, before you deliver your line to Aguiar, before you respond to him, think in your head, I want to fucking murder you. I hate you. I need to get the fuck out of here. And then say your line, so there's this moment of thought, this chess game going on all the time. So it just lends itself to a very unreal, unnatural sort of conversational tone.
Yeah, I think that comes through very well too. It's because it never feels stilted. It always feels very like, there's just menace just all around. And it's like every word you say could be like life
To
or
change,
death.
everything will have consequence. So
Yeah.
you wouldn't just be chatting it up.
Right. Hey, Aguiar,
Yeah.
where are you going to bite me today? The arm, the
Yeah.
leg, So as my last questions to you, just because I'm so curious, because you're obviously an artist first and everything that you do, and I'm always curious in terms of filmmaking, what were a few of the films and maybe directors that have really inspired you and your aesthetic so much?
Yeah, I mean, I'm 57 years old now. Fuck. So I was definitely a child of the 70s. And I started watching movies that you wouldn't normally watch as a 9, 10-year-old.
Same.
Yeah, I would watch Clockwork Orange, 10 years old. I would watch all that jazz. I was watching Woody Allen movies as a child. So that stuff stuck with me. All the, that whole, Easy Rider, Raging Bull scene was always my jam, like Taxi Driver. And, it just that the reality of those 70s films, the, and then I became a teenager and also, I sort of experienced the whole boom in the 80s of those sort of big popcorn blockbuster movies, which I love, but it was never my first love. Is I'd rather watch Five Easy Pieces, than Back to the Future. If that, even though I love Back to the Future, it's just, that's what that's the stuff that I think just got in my DNA as a young kid. So that stuff always plays into the vibe I like to create.
70s films were definitely a lot grittier, and then like it become popcorn movies in the 80s. It's a definite shift, I'd say.
Yeah, and again, they were not all of them, but I mean, I think you got away with things that there was no other time like it, and then as movies became blockbusters, you couldn't play in that space as much, unless you were making some weird indie movie. But when you think about movies that were mainstream commercial movies in the 70s, they're fucking weird, man. Like, and some of them weren't successful. I mean, I loved like Hal Ashby stuff, Harold and Maude, and they just, I don't know, they just feel like there's nothing wrong with a movie that's, A happens, B happens, C happens. But some of those movies, they just feel like they're almost dreamlike. You know what I mean? They have a different quality to them, even if they are very rooted in reality. I just, it's so, I mean, I don't remember what your question was, but I think it was what movies were influenced on me. And I think that whole scene was my biggest influence.
So
Yeah.
before I get started into my part, and like Jay mentioned earlier, it is done a little bit different. Don't be nervous or scared. It's just a little fun aside. since I don't have the
You
depth
were a
of
tree.
knowledge that
What
they
kind of
have.
tree would you be?
Dang, my first question. Okay. No, actually, my first question is for a friend of mine who's Hispanic. He wanted me to ask you if you were excited to come to Mexico City for New Metal Revolution this year.
Yeah, it's great. We've been trying to get now. It's funny. I've been doing this band forever, and we've played. I played 50 states a million times. I've been all through Europe to China to Japan to Australia. I've never played in Mexico, so it's crazy.
Wow.
Like you think that would be easy, right? That would be this will be the first time ever. So yeah, I'm excited for sure.
Awesome. I'll let him know. All right. So, like we said, this is a little different. This is Kellen's Fast Five. Don't worry, still workshopping that. I can't come up with anything
It's going to be
better.
tough for me because I tend to ramble on and on and on. But go ahead.
Well, I have ADD, so I'll be right there with you.
All right.
So this is just 5 questions. I'm going to give you the question. First thing to pop in your head, that's the answer we'll go with, and we'll move on. So, are you ready?
Yes, absolutely ready.
All right. Number 1, if you could collaborate with any musician in history, who would it be and why?
Any musician in history. Interesting. Well, listen, that's a tough one because I could talk about a million people, but I think the biggest influence on me as a musician and someone I would love to have, I did meet him briefly, but not in a way, was not in a meaningful way, but would have been Joe Strummer from The Clash. I know The Clash is a very, very different band than my band, but that was the band that, as a kid, made me think being in a band would be the coolest thing in the world. And I always loved Joe Strummer's, back to sort of what we were talking about, 70s movies. When I listened to The Clash as a kid, I didn't always know what they were singing about, but it sounded fucking important. Like Sandinista. They had an album called Sandinista. I don't know what the fuck Sandinista was as a 14-year-old kid, but so I think working with him would be, he's passed on, but would have been incredibly cool and exciting, just as a childhood dream.
Oh, fantastic. All right, question number 2, and I see that there's 2 different genres just behind you in the artwork that you've created. So this will be a great question. Name a non-horror movie you think could be made into a good horror film.
Oh, interesting. I mean, look, it's funny. I'm not answering your questions fast at all, but I do think in a related topic, like what is a horror movie that isn't a horror movie, right? Like I think there are movies out there that no one considers horror movies that are really scary. Like that movie Bully. I don't know if you who directed that, but okay, let me answer your question. What would a non-horror movie make a great horror movie? You've Got Mail.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
I mean, it just sounds terrifying.
Yeah, that's a good one. And not one I would have thought of, but yeah, a great answer.
Sounds like a stalker movie, right? Like
yeah. All right. Well, moving right along. Number 3, if you could be a fly on the wall during the making of one movie or song, what would it be? To just be there during the envisioning and the creation of that piece.
Movie would be easy. Would be The Shining. The Shining is one of my all-time favorite movies, and we've all seen a lot of great behind-the-scenes footage of The Shining and making the but it just, yeah, I mean, I just am fascinated with that movie. I think it's, there's a short list of perfect movies, and that's definitely on. And and you hear so many legendary tales about Kubrick and how he worked, and he made you do 150 takes, and it would just be interesting to see, one, how much of that is true. And if it is true, how crazy that would feel to be in the middle of all that madness. So yeah, for sure.
He definitely comes across intense in his process anytime you see anything about Kubrick.
Yeah.
So yeah, great pick. I've never seen The Shining, so I'll go ahead and apologize to you and everybody else.
So sad.
How is this guy part of this podcast?
Please don't
I
leave.
get that question
Please don't
all
leave.
the time.
He's the noob of the group, so we're
Okay.
gradually training him in the ways.
You're putting a list of films together that he must see, and yeah, okay.
I saw Night of the Living Dead because of TJ about 3 months ago. So
'Cause I bought it for you.
He hasn't seen The Shining, but he saw I Spit on Your Grave 3.
Oh, well, then you're fine. Yeah, that's fine.
And Rubber, movie about a killer tire. Anyway, number 4, what was your favorite horror movie of 2024?
You know what? I think other than Little Bites,
I was saying, can you pick his own?
no, you know what movie I loved?
No
that
rules
a lot of people didn't talk as much about as they should. I loved The First Omen. I don't know if anybody here saw that.
That was a
That
lot
was
better
good.
than I expected. We did an episode on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I went in there sort of going like, all right, let's see, and as it started to unfold, I'm like, this is great. And it's just like really ambitious, and the performances were great. And yeah, I just and maybe because I was so surprised, and my reaction to it, it made it feel even better. So I think that would be, I don't, as well, for what I can think of now, that was probably like my top one.
Had a little Rosemary's Baby vibe, a little bit.
Yeah, and again, back to the '70s thing. I mean, I think they handled it great. It looked, it really did look authentically of the time, and yeah, it was cool.
And they paid some good homage to the original Omen as well, I thought.
Yeah. Do you see that? Have you seen The Omen?
Yeah, I have seen The Omen and The Exorcist. I watched both of those in the same
Oh,
night.
you saw The Exorcist?
Yeah,
Oh.
I saw both of those.
He's coming
about
along.
the time
Right.
that When Worlds Collide came out in 1999, which leads me to my fifth question and final. When Worlds Collide came out in 1999 and was one of the songs, at least for me, that kind of opened my eyes to metal. I was 15 going on 16. So I grew up with my mom playing, top 40 hits in the car rides.
Sure.
So I was listening to Ace of Base and Hathaway and LaBouche, music like that. And my dad was like, no, son of mine. And had me listen to Alice in Chains' Wood.
Right.
And I started kind of transitioning, and then this kind of song came out, as well as Push It by Static X. And then,
Sure.
of course, you go into Tool and Rob Zombie, and you get deeper in the metal hole and the different genres and Korn. Anyway, so that opened my eyes to metal. Is there a movie in the horror genre that was similar for you that kind of opened your eyes to that genre?
Huh. I mean, yeah, there's probably a lot of them. I mean, I think as a real little young kid, like I'm talking 5 or 6, it would have been like Japanese Godzilla movies. Where I grew up, there was every weekend they would do something called Creature Double Feature on the local TV channel, and they play Godzilla movies. And I was a teenage werewolf and all that kind of stuff. So that, I mean, I think, I don't know how much you consider those horror movies, but I think that those were movies that really opened up my eyes to that. But then probably as more of a young adult, it would have been probably Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or, some of the 80s slasher stuff, Friday the 13th, stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, I think there were probably like 2 stages of eye-opening to the genre.
You survived the 5. Fucking LaBouche, Kellen. LaBouche. What an obscure reference that I absolutely had that CD. The Be My Lover song. I had that shit.
LaBouche.
Da 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 dee, da 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 da.
All right. So aside from Big Baby, you got anything else down the pipe?
But that's not enough for you. My God, come on.
Is that coming out later this year?
Who knows? I mean, we're finishing it up. I mean, it's ready to go. We definitely want to have Big Baby out this year, but that is not always up to us. When something gets bought and released and distributed. But I mean, I'm always working on stuff. I've got some ideas for some new stuff. I'm working on a script right now. So yeah, I think it's always important to have the next thing kind of like teed up and ready to go, because it's easy to, because making a movie is an enormous amount of work. And by the time you're done, you're exhausted and you're so sick of it and you've seen it a million times, and you want that next thing to be ready to sort of re-energize your creative flow, so yeah, there'll be something next coming soon.
Awesome. Well, we're looking forward to it. Thank you again. We're going to close up shop. So be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, to wherever you're listening to this podcast. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on TikTok. We Facebook group. And I think that's it. Amazon Music playlist, which will have some Powerman 5000 on there to go with this episode. So Spider-One, thank you again so much. We've done interviews before, but someone who, you say grow up, but 99, I graduated 2002. So interviewing someone who had like an impact on my musical style and how I progressed, it means a little bit more. So thank you again. We really appreciate it. It's one of the best
Yeah.
interviews we've done.
Yeah. Thanks for making time, man. Appreciate
You want
Absolutely.
to take a second, tell everybody where they can find your music, your movies, and everything in between.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all the places I guess everybody is on Instagram and all that stuff. Allegoria, as you mentioned, is on Shudder, and also VOD. Bury the Bride's on Tubi. Little Bites is on VOD now, but we'll be hitting Shudder. I don't know when this episode will air, but it'll be on Shudder February 21st. So anyone who has Shudder will be able to watch it on that. And Big Baby coming soon. And Powerman 5000 will forever be touring at some place somewhere. So just keep an eye out for tour dates.
All right, we'll try to hit Nashville. We'll come.
Of course.
It's been a long time since I see you guys live. You remember
Nice.
BuzzFest in Nashville at all? Like, you have any recognition?
Yeah, I remember BuzzFest. Yeah.
So there was an autograph tent, and you guys were on the end, and I was an asshole, and I went out of line and went around to the side. But you guys signed my stuff anyway. So
there you go.
But yeah, good times. So thank you again. Signing off. I'm Jay with Kellen, TJ, and Spider One. And until next time,
keep it spooky.
So
yeah.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And,
feel free to come on when you got Big Baby to promote.
Yeah, I'll come back and do it again, and we'll get Chrissy on.
Yeah.
Answer 5 questions. I'll make the 5 questions. Oh wait.
Oh, you can make the questions and send them to us.
Hey.
Oh yeah.
We didn't say that you were amazing in Little Bites earlier. We said you were terrible. You were terrible in Little Bites.
Such a great performance. Such a great performance.
Wait, hold on. There is a RoboCop.
Yeah, there's a RoboCop too.
Oh wow.
Amazing.
What does it say? All the gods are dead.
Except the gods of war. Yeah, I did this weird. I did a series of paintings that were robots with quotes about God. So that's and then the C-3PO says God is a concept, which is a John Lennon quote. Yeah,
that's really cool.
Fantastic.
Peter Weller,
I did
the only RoboCop, right?
What's that, RoboCop?
Peter Weller is like the only RoboCop, right?
Yeah, I don't even think I've seen the remake or the reboot or whatever.
Yeah, don't.
No reason to.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again.
Awesome, guys.
Nice to meet you guys.
You too.
All
Good to meet you.
Bye.
We'll see you next time.
All right.
Bye.
Peace.
Yeah.